Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome back to ENL 51, Rap as Poetry. This is week 2, and this week we are talking about the Black Radical tradition. I've got a couple disclaimers that I want to start off with. First of all, I've separated our syllabus out, our weeks out into themes, specific categories and concepts that we talk about in each week, for the sake of clarifying and emphasizing some of the important stuff that rap is all about. But these themes, as they exist in rap music and in hip hop culture and in life, these themes all blur together and overlap and interconnect and influence each other. So we're not just studying the Black radical tradition this week and then moving on. This whole class is about the Black radical tradition. Last week we studied storytelling and shit talking, but really this whole class is about storytelling and shit talking. The whole class is about gender, sex, sexuality, and women in hip hop, etc. So all of this stuff kind of blurs together, but I find the weekly themes useful in identifying some of the core concepts and digging into them. Cool, so that's disclaimer 1. Disclaimer number 2 is that as a white person myself, I am not the ideal person to be teaching you the Black radical tradition. I am not an expert. I am a lifelong student of the Black radical tradition, and I've learned a lot in my time. But I consider my role as mostly giving you an introduction and helping you develop and sharpen the critical thinking skills, the tools and techniques that you need in order to most fruitfully engage with the experts themselves, the teachers themselves. So your teachers about the Black radical tradition are Melly Mel from Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, Mos Def, Rapsody, Lauryn Hill, Killer Mike, etc. Cool. So what is this term, the Black radical tradition? This is a term that scholars, philosophers, thinkers, and activists use to talk about the long history of Black folks and Black communities resisting mainstream power structures, resisting white supremacist power structures, capitalism and capitalist power structures, and colonialism and colonization. From the folks who fought against slavery and enslavement in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries, through the civil rights movement, the Black Panthers, and the Black Lives movement, Black Lives Matter movement today. The Black radical tradition is a way for us to look at these different movements and these different periods in social history as a more or less uninterrupted story of Black folks resisting oppression and developing creative, innovative ways of surviving, thriving, and revising power structures in order to live. And so this term refers to philosophers who analyze society and these power structures. It refers to activists and organizers who build movements. And it also refers to artists of whether musical or otherwise, artists who use their creativity in order to critique the power structures that I've named, or in order to imagine other ways of living and being. You might have heard the term Afrofuturism. I think that's been kind of in vogue recently in like science fiction and stuff. I think the Black Panther movie is like kind of an example of that, of imagining a kind of futurity and life built around Black folks and Black communities, and built on the genius and creativity and values of Black folks and Black communities. So that would be part of the Black radical tradition. Cool. Historically speaking, music in particular plays a huge role in the Black radical tradition and in Black social movements overall. This scholar, W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a super important philosopher and thinker and activist in the early 20th century. He talked a lot about how the spirituals, I think he called them the sorrow songs, but the spirituals that enslaved folks sang were insights into what he called the souls of Black folk and the double consciousness that Black folks had to live with, and the ways that Black communities organized themselves. So he said music plays a key role in that. So we see it in the spirituals, we see it later in the blues, jazz, gospel, and how that plays into the civil rights movement, for example. And now we see it in hip hop. We've got, how long, 30, 40 years now? Jeez, I'm getting old. We've got 40 years of hip hop playing a part in Black social movements, in political movements in particular. And that's what we're going to be digging into today and this week. I have some notes to myself. I don't write lectures. I just like write some notes that come to mind. And the next note is Kanye West, quote, George Bush doesn't care about Black people. So I don't know how I was going to transition from the last point into this one exactly. I don't remember that. I wrote these notes a few days ago. Nevertheless, there's this really cool moment. You know, I believe that almost all of you know who Kanye West is, and he's a very strange and bizarre character these days. And I'm not entirely sure how you all think of him or feel about him. You know, he did his whole Trump supporting thing, wearing the Make America Great Again hat and stuff. And so he's a troubled character person for a lot of different reasons, and he's been troubled for a long time. But like in his original, when he like was putting out his first 3 albums, really, the role he played in hip hop culture was like transcendent. It was super important. He was an amazing producer, a serviceable rapper, at least. And he just said important stuff, both on his songs and in the media and stuff. And so there was this like, I remember I was watching it live. There was like a fundraiser for victims of Hurricane Katrina. And they had Kanye West and the actor Mike Myers, the dude from Austin Powers, I think. They were on together. And you know, they have a script that they're supposed to follow, and Mike Myers says some stuff, and they're trying to get people to donate money to help the survivors of Hurricane Katrina. And then Kanye goes off script, and he like starts, you know, he looks very nervous. He's kind of sweating. He's like sort of stumbling in his words a little bit, and he's like, you know, I hate the way that they portray us, meaning Black people, in the media. When you see when they talk about white people, it says they found food, and when it talks about Black people, it says they were stealing. And he's kind of working his way up to his point, and then he just like looks straight at the camera, and he said, George Bush doesn't care about Black people. And George Bush was the president at the time. And Mike Myers, like during Kanye's ramble, Mike Myers is like trying to nod and support when Kanye says something that he kind of understands. And he's like, clearly he's nervous too that Kanye is going off script. He doesn't know what he's going to say. And then once Kanye drops that line, Mike Myers is just like, he just looks like just deer caught in the headlights. He doesn't know what to do. And it was like this huge explosive thing. So Kanye West used to be like the revolutionary in hip hop, and now he's something else, which is sad. I think we've really needed like 2004 Kanye for like 6 years now. Cool. So yeah, Black music plays a huge role in the Black radical tradition and in Black social movements. At the same time, the general cultural reception of Black music is complicated. There are, as we all know, lots of white and generally non-Black fans of hip hop music, fans of Black music and Black culture in general. I think about also like the ways that white folks pick up slang that originates in Black communities. And then, you know, by the time you hear all kinds of white people saying it, Black folks aren't really using that slang anymore. And so I think there's like this trend in American culture in particular where white folks purchase and become fans of and style themselves with Black art and Black culture. And too often white folks do that without actually caring about or engaging with Black people and Black communities, right? And so I think there's a huge difference between thinking of Black music as like a decoration and thinking of it as a vital cultural production that is directly tied to the ways that this community of oppressed people survives and thrives in a culture that doesn't want them to. Um, so yeah, I would like all of us who are students of rap, who are scholars of rap, um, especially those of us who are non-Black people, which is most of us in this class are non-Black people, it seems like. Um, I would like us to remember that, and to remember that appreciating this Black cultural production calls us to engage with the lives and tragedies and pains and joys of Black people and Black communities in the ways that make sense in our own lives, to stand with Black people in meaningful ways. Cool. So I want to get into the songs. Trying to give myself a little, I'm trying to learn like the very most basic elements of video editing, to like put a little subtitle on the screen and to like give you timestamps for when I'm switching topics so that you can return to these lectures and use them a little bit more easily. So yeah, that's why I'm trying to learn how to pause. Okay, the required songs. Pause. Up first, we've got Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, The Message from 1982. So Grandmaster Flash is the DJ. He's one of the most iconic, legendary DJs from the very early period of hip hop. DJ Kool Herc and Grandmaster Flash are two of like the big 3 or 4 or 5. I won't name one of the other ones because it's a long story. Why am I doing this myself? Grandmaster Flash is the DJ. The Furious Five is the name of his crew, but the only rapper, the only voice you hear on this track is Melly Mel. So this is Melly Mel's song. He's the primary writer, and he's the rapper on it. The Message. Probably many of you have heard this song or parts of it before. It's a classic. It's one of the moments where hip hop transitions from being party music to being political music. And it's very early on in the development of hip hop. And I have a lot of friends and people that I look up to and admire who would make the argument that for oppressed communities like the communities that gave birth to hip hop, partying is inherently political. That's celebrating life and finding joy for Black folks and Black communities. Working class folks and working class communities is inherently political and revolutionary. And I like that. I like that idea a lot. Nevertheless, there's clearly a huge difference between what Melly Mel is doing in The Message and what like the Sugar Hill Gang was doing in their kind of more shallow party raps and stuff like that. So Melly Mel is giving us many portraits of what it felt like, what it looked like, what it smelled like to live in the city, to live in working class neighborhoods, to grow up Black in a white supremacist, classist society. That's another thing I wanted to mention about the Black radical tradition, is that it is especially known for analyzing the ways that class and economics and race, and then in some different ways, colonialism, how these forces interact and interconnect. The Black radical tradition is always thinking about how class is inflected with race and how race is inflected with class. And these are two different kinds of identity markers, but they always work together in the ways that they build power structures, oppression, and exploitation. So you see a lot of that in what Melly Mel is up to in The Message. Up next, we've got Public Enemy, Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos from 1988. I think it's from their album, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. I think their next album was Fear of a Black Planet. Public Enemy, one of the classics of political hip hop. Chuck D is the main MC in the group. Flavor Flav somehow became more famous in the late 2000s. I mean, it's from his TV show on VH1 or whatever. I don't know if that's still famous to you all. I don't really know. But Chuck D was the main MC in Public Enemy. And this is a storytelling song where he imagines a prison break, a prison riot, and again, makes connections between race and class, and highlights the criminal justice system from policing to imprisonment, what scholars call the carceral state, the structure of incarceration that polices, especially Black and brown folks. He thinks about the interconnections of that stuff and how that plays a fundamental role in Black life and the kind of violence that faces Black folks. Up next, we've got Black Star, which is a group composed of Mos Def. He now goes by Yasiin Bey, but when he was making music, he was called Mos Def. Made up of him and Talib Kweli. They're a duo. And Black Star, sadly, they only put out this one album. There's hypothetically a second Black Star album that was made at one point and has not been released and might never be released. And fans are kind of bummed about that. But Yasiin Bey has been pretty public about like saying that, well, you know, we didn't believe in the final product and we don't have to release it if we don't want to, which legit. So this song, Astronomy, Eighth Light, from their 1998 album Black Star, or Mos Def and Talib Kweli are Black Star. Awesome. Mos Def to me is, I might put him at my #1 MC of all time. I think he's got the skills, the intelligence, the creativity, the influence, the style, the really just visionary approach to both the music and the philosophy that he weaves into it. He's one of my favorites. He's got rhythm, in-depth rhyme skills, etc. So I can't say enough good things about Mos Def, Yasiin Bey. I can say many fewer good things about Talib Kweli, but he says some cool stuff too. So this song, Astronomy, Eighth Light, I think gives us a different perspective on the Black radical tradition, or like gives us another inflection point. This one is maybe a little bit less practically political. It's less about one particular political issue, and it's more about the being of Black folks in general, the lives and livelihoods and kind of nature of what it means to be Black in a philosophical sense for Mos Def and Talib Kweli. Up next, we've got Mos Def, aka Yasiin Bey, Mathematics, from his first solo album, Black on Both Sides. Absolute classic. I recommend that you just listen to the whole record, actually. But Mathematics, it's an awesome song, really impressive lyricism. And my rap teacher, or hip hop poetics teacher, Adrian Matika, I think we'll read a poem of his at some point this summer. He said, whenever an MC starts doing math on the track, you know it's about to get real. And Mos Def does some legitimate mathematics in this song, starts dropping numbers and statistics. And again, he's thinking about the ways that race and class intersect. He's thinking about how the criminal justice system interacts with the education system, which scholars and activists have called the school to prison pipeline. And he's thinking about how a lot of different cultural issues add together to create this oppressive structure that Black and brown and working class folks live in. Note, it's a song from 1999. Some of the details are really interesting to me. You know, he says like 40% of Americans own a cell phone. That's fascinating that that was true in 1998. And I haven't looked up the statistics, but I'll bet, you know, much higher number now. Interesting. Up next, we've got Run the Jewels, featuring Zach De La Rocha, Close Your Eyes and Count to Fuck, 2014. I'm actually going to make a separate lecture video for this song. And in that, I'll give the background and history of who they are. I'll give a little oral history on that song in particular. And I want to do a kind of deep dive analyzing some of the lyrics to give you a kind of example of how to think analytically and deeply about some of the stuff that's going on in these rap lyrics. So check out my other video for Run the Jewels. Up next, I put on the video for Joyner Lucas's song, I'm Not Racist. This video went pretty viral back in 2017. Maybe not as viral as Childish Gambino's that we watched last week, but still pretty viral. I like Joyner Lucas. I don't know. I haven't heard like a ton of his stuff, but this and a few other tracks have like, I think he's doing interesting things. He's a name that I want to keep an eye out for a lot more. So this video, I want to just give you a warning. The video is rough. It's difficult to watch. The song is rough. Joyner Lucas is a black man, and the song is written. The first verse is written in the voice of a white racist, a white supremacist, and the second verse is rapped in the voice of a black man. So and the video plays that out. In the video you see a white guy, I think, wearing a Trump hat, saying racist stuff. It's in Joyner Lucas's voice, but you see a white guy saying racist stuff. So it's a troubling video. If you do not have the emotional space for that, I respect that, and I invite you to skip this song and video this week, and just make sure to listen to one of the B-sides instead if you weren't going to already. It's intense. That said, I think it's like a fascinating piece of art, a really interesting thing to think about and study. And also, I have questions about the rhetoric of it, because it's like a white dude telling his story and a black dude telling his story. It sort of suggests like a parallelism, or like that these two things are equal or similar. And I just don't think that's really true. I think like what the white dude is saying is much more violent and dangerous than what the black dude is saying, because of the realities of race and power in America. So I have questions about that. And then I also have questions about the conclusion of the song seems to be, if we can both listen to each other's stories, we can come to an understanding. And I don't know. I think that white folks and non-black folks need to get better at listening to the stories and lived experiences of black folks. I think that's definitely true. I don't know if it's an even one-to-one comparison the way Joyner Lucas suggests in this video and in this song. So I don't know. But it's an interesting piece of art, and I'm curious if any of you all want to write about it. I'm curious to see your take on it. And up finally on the required songs, we've got Rapsody, her song Nina from 2019. Rapsody is a rapper I don't know quite as much about. I love this track. I'm very impressed by the rhyme scheme, by the stuff that she says, the way she blends politics, philosophy, and just like street reality, and like just getting down to reality. I think it's really cool. I like it a lot. I do know that the album it seems to be, every track is like named for and dedicated to an important black woman. It's talking about the history of black folks and black women in particular, and kind of has a black power vibe to it. So I dig that. And the song is named for Nina Simone, super important jazz singer, member of the civil rights movement, activist. Jazz singer is kind of reductive. She does a lot more than that. But Nina Simone, super important figure. This song starts out with a clip from Strange Fruit, a Nina Simone track, and talks about that. Yeah, cool. So the B-sides, optional songs, I'm going to try to get through quickly. NWA, Fuck the Police. Yes. You probably have heard of this song, and if not, I hope you listen to it. It's fun, it's cool, it's interesting. One thing that interests me about the song, beyond just the in-your-faceness about it, and NWA being like a super important, iconic group in hip-hop history, one of the first really risings of the West Coast as a place for hip-hop, up before NWA really emerged. Most of the notable hip-hop that was being made and put out there was from New York. And so NWA brought some balance to that. But one thing I find really interesting is the sketches in this song, where like they're like playing a court trial for a murderous cop. I think that's interesting. Up next, we've got Boogie Down Productions, which is the name of the group. KRS-One is the name of the rapper. I talked about him a little bit last week. He's kind of positioned himself as like the spiritual leader of hip hop. This is one of his classic tracks, My Philosophy. Up next, the video for Public Enemy's By the Time I Get to Arizona. That song, so it's a little bit before my time. Like, I don't remember this, but what I gather is that the governor of Arizona like canceled Martin Luther King Day or something like that. And so Chuck from Public Enemy got pissed off about that and made a song about marching on Arizona militantly. And then they made this video that was like, features like violence and assassination of political figures. And white people were mad and scared when this came out. And it was like one of the flashpoints of hip hop really presenting a threat to mainstream white society. That is just, it's just a video. It's a song and a video. And yet people were like very upset. White people were very upset. I'll bet this song and video got banned. I don't know that for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised. So check it out. It's fun. Up next, Kanye, All Falls Down. I just think the ways that he talks about, again, the intersection between race and class and gender a little bit in this song is pretty radical, pretty thoughtful, even though it seems like he's just rapping about money and wanting to be rich. I think like the stuff he says is really deep about class and about race. Lil Wayne, Georgia Bush. I wish that I had more Lil Wayne on this syllabus, just don't quite have the space for him, but he's one of those dudes also who, like, for a short time in the mid 2000s, his name was a popular one to put on like the greatest of all time list, or at least the greatest living rapper list. He has not really maintained that kind of energy in the public conversation, but I think it's worth noting. It's interesting. Lil Wayne, he was like Drake's mentor. He was, at one point, Lil Wayne was considered better and more popular than Drake. Drake is not on this syllabus. Up next, Killer Mike, Reagan. I'm going to talk about Killer Mike in the Run the Jewels video. He's one half of Run the Jewels. Good song. YG and Nipsey Hussle, FDT from 2016. Rest in peace, Nipsey. I have a memory of going to a protest in Sacramento. Must have been probably 2016, probably a protest against Trump. I don't remember exactly. But I have this clear, vivid memory of one of the leaders of the march starting to chant the chorus to this song and leading the entire crowd. So we all marched around downtown Sacramento chanting this song. And that, to me, is just one of those like moments where you see, oh yeah, the role that Black music plays in the Black radical tradition and in Black social movements. It's like just clear right there in that moment. Yeah. And up finally on the B-sides, this is one of the things that I include a link to on the syllabus because I haven't looked, but I would be surprised if it was like on YouTube or one of the streaming services. The Cornel West Theory, Minnesota Goddamn 2020. The Cornel West Theory, I found out about this group some years ago, and they're like an underground political philosophical group. I think they're from DC or Baltimore. And they like this, so they're named for a Black public intellectual, Cornel West. He's like a philosopher and a theologian. He's a professor at Harvard. He might have recently quit Harvard in protest of something. I didn't read the articles, but he's a really dope thinker. And they named their group for him. They have him on a couple of their older tracks. He like gave them his blessing. So I think that's really cool. And I was just like searching them up to see if I could fit something of theirs on the syllabus. And I found this EP they put out in 2020 following the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, called Minnesota Goddamn. Minneapolis is my hometown. So this is a, pretty emotional thing for me. It was like my friends and my community members getting tear gassed by police and stuff last year. So this song, one thing I wanted to say about it, Minnesota Goddamn, is a clear reference to Nina Simone's song, Mississippi Goddamn. It was one of her very first political songs. Before that, she was like just a pop jazz singer. And then she came out with Mississippi Goddamn, protesting the murder of Emmett Till, who gets name dropped in Rapsody's song, Nina. So she made this protest song talking about the violence against Black folks, especially in places like Mississippi, called it Mississippi Goddamn. And now the Cornel West Theory is calling back to that and kind of naming Minnesota as another flashpoint of white supremacist anti-Black violence, and as a way, as a locus for protest and resistance to rise up against that. So that's another thing maybe that I just want to conclude by saying about the Black radical tradition. The reason it feels important that it's a tradition, that we want to have this ongoing legacy of Black genius and Black radicalism resisting the power structures, and that it creates these important figures like Nina Simone, who gets referred back to again and again, so that folks today can think of their legacy, their ancestors, their teachers, and the work that they did in different times, and see how we are extending that work in the present moment. So Nina Simone being a figure who gets referred to in multiple songs this week is like one example of that. Yeah, I wish I had scanned through the songs to look for. I'll bet there are more moments like that where there's a kind of intertextuality where, oh yeah, I'll talk about it in the Run the Jewels song, I think. Cool, great. So yeah, that's that. We've got a chapter from the Adam Bradley book to read. Oh, and page poems I didn't put on the syllabus, but I'm going to upload them to the Canvas. There's a poem by Denez Smith called Dear White America. I'll bet there's a video of it. I'll try to find a video and post it to you. Denez is an excellent performance poet from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And this is an awesome poem of theirs. They use they, them pronouns. Morgan Parker, If You Are Over Staying Woke. I think this is a beautiful and profound and complicated poem that I'm really excited to share with you. And then Douglas Kearney, poem called No Homo. It's important to note Doug's poem No Homo, referring to a catchphrase that was popular in rap culture 10 years ago. I don't know, no homo. He's satirizing and critiquing that in his poem. And another interesting thing is you'll see the poem, he like plays a lot with formatting on the page. He's like part poet, part visual artist, graphic designer. And so I don't know exactly how to like analyze or engage with his poem and the way it works on the page, but I think it's like endlessly fascinating and complex. So I wanted to share just kind of a few different ways that contemporary poets are taking up and continuing the Black radical tradition in the poetic art form, in addition to what we see the rappers doing. Cool. This lecture probably became longer than I meant for it to. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm really excited, as usual, to see what y'all come up with in the weekly forum posts. As I'm recording this, I haven't been able to read your weekly forum posts from week 1 yet. I will read those and grade them. I'm aiming for Wednesday as the date to release grades to you, so that you have a chance to see how you did before working on your second weekly forum post. So Wednesday, grades should be out. I'm going to comment on the posts that I grade. I'm grading half of the posts, and we've got a reader, TA, Bailey Harrison. She's a former student in this class and a brilliant mind and scholar of hip hop poetics. She'll be grading the other half, and then we'll flip. So if you don't get comments from me this week, you'll get comments from me next week, and so on. Cool. So as usual, if you have any questions about the material for this week, about the assignments, the expectations, the structure of the class, hip hop history, the Black radical tradition, anything like that, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to chat. I'm happy to email you back, set up a time to Zoom chat, etc. I hope you all have a lovely week, and I will see you again. I don't really see you, but you will see me again. That's a weird way to end the video, but here we are.